Okay, late to the party. I know there have already been a myriad of channels dropping their opinions and speculation to us what the new announced Star Trek series could be about, and I realised I've been voicing my opinions to myself in my apartment, as well as boring my non-Trekkie co-workers, and haven't actually talked to the people I care about.
Psst, that's you guys. I'm so alone.
First off, what am I expecting from the series and Sir Patrick Stewart? Well, considering he's before stated that he would never bring back the character for a role he thought would do it disservice, I'm optimistic. As for Alex Kurtzman having the overall creative control of the franchise, I'm actually relieved. In recent times, in my opinion, Trek has been kept alive by the old guard of fans and the 2009 films. Those films, while not the classic Trek that I'd recognise, did what it set out to do, create an epic sci-fi blockbuster that, if nothing else, retains the relevance of Star Trek as a name while reminding a new generation that Star Trek was a thing. Discovery damaged this for me. Personally, I try to retain a level and analytical head while viewing Discovery, but overall it doesn't make it onto my metaphorical watch again for fun pile. I say metaphorical as there's no actual pile, being as it's completely digitally locked behind a CBS paywall, an idea I also disagree with, even though being in the UK I get it on Netflix. Why am I saying all of this? What's the relevance of my opinions on Star Trek Discovery? Well, that's just it. I hope this bears no relevance on the Picard post-Nemesis series. I don't want the series to be muddied by interference from corporate powers that are worried it won't make a big enough splash in our collective consumer wallets. Make it good and the people will come to you willingly. I have faith in the individuals behind the project, just not the powers. So these predictions will be based on the idea that they are trying to continue the Trek universe, not restart, reboot, reimagine or regurgitate it. Being set 20-ish years later means that they get to redesign things how they see fit, to a degree, but there have been numerous memory beta storylines that occupy this time. As beta content, they do stand to be pushed aside, a la Star Wars Legends, but as with Legends, there are stories, characters and events that exist because they picked up on the narrative threads that were left in the series and ran with them, spinning a wonderful tapestry that felt like a legitimate continuation of the show's universe. To be clear, I don't want them to decide just to retell stories made up for books or Star Trek Online or anything, but I would expect the style of the show to be reflective of its source material in some way. Therefore, I hope to see similarities to media that has also attempted to do this. So with all that said, what will Picard be up to in the show? Well, he really could be up to a lot, or nothing at all, and at the end of this I'll put my chips down on a card, or in the roulette wheel, or wherever it is you shove them, and pick my most likely contender. Picard has worn many hats throughout his life, see the personnel file for more info, and after such a long stretch of time, he could be continuing on in any one of his fields of expertise. Let's start with Captaincy. Well, the knightly sir has gone on and said that this is unlikely, and I agree. While he may have changed as an individual, this seems to curtail any true growth if he's remained a captain of the Enterprise E all this time. I do think that Picard will encounter moments where he will have to take charge of a situation, and we will see him on the bridge of a starship, but I strongly expect to see this in a more advisory role, like Kirk to Harriman in Generations. I also don't see Picard taking the chair on any ship not named Enterprise after the E, and in numerous beta storylines he had handed command of the Sovereign class ship to Data, who was restored from the memories of B4. More than just fanfiction or wishful thinking, tell me that wasn't the whole point of the drops in Nemesis, where Geordi says B4 will have all of Data's experiences in his mind, and that B4 begins to recall Data's memories in a limited capacity just before the final curtain of the film. I think Data will be back by this time, and in command of the Enterprise E by 2387. We don't have to see him or see the ship if legal Paramount CBS reasons don't permit, but it would be a way to keep with the foreshadowing set up in the series. Picard as a captain though? I doubt it. Well, what about an admiral then? Well, maybe Picard took a promotion and began flying a desk, but I don't think so. Admirals often have to find a reason to get out there and actively do stuff. Most of their time is devoted to logistics and reports. Picard could do a lot of good here, and we might have a show more like a political drama of sorts, but I just don't see it. Too much risk, it would be dull. It's for this reason too that I don't see him involved in politics like the Federation's Office of the President or anything. Again, a cool area of lore we haven't explored much, but Picard's probably not the right person to fit this kind of show and still draw an audience. Plus, Trek has always been vague about how the Federation's power structure actually works. It's meant to be a utopian society, which, like warp theory, is a nice idea, but the actual schematics for it don't exist. Yet. Alright then, what about a diplomatic role? He always was a dab hand at diplomacy and preferred to talk his way out of a situation many times. It was one of the reasons why he was posted as the Enterprise D's CO in the first place. He had proven himself apt with the entire Starfleet skill set. Well, to avoid the sort of situations we'd see him in with the Admiral or Politician future, we'd have to place him in a role where he'd be out and about, like an ambassador. Okay, so if he was an ambassador, where would his focus be? Well, some great development for him occurs in the two-part episode's Unification, where Picard departs undercover to Romulus to find Ambassador Spock. Find him he does, and he learns that Spock is attempting to bring about diplomatic channels on Romulus to allow citizens to learn about their Vulcan heritage and reunify the two cousin species, bringing a great level of stability to the galactic scene in the process, something which Picard naturally supports. By the end of Star Trek Nemesis, Commander Denatra of the Valdor has teamed up with Picard against Shinzon. By the end, suggesting that the joint effort would yield an olive branch between the Federation of Planets and the Romulan Empire. Then, in the Prime timeline, the Hobus supernova detonated and unexpectedly travelled through subspace, destroying the nearby Romulan star system. Last-minute efforts by Spock and the Vulcan Science Council failed to curtail the event in time, and Spock, to all outside appearances, was killed in the blast. So perhaps Picard, inspired by Spock's legacy, becomes the Federation Romulan ambassador to continue his work for Sarek's memory, so Spock's efforts weren't for naught. And because Shinzon was a clone of himself, perhaps there's some lingering feeling of responsibility. This seems like a highly probable outcome to me, a natural continuation of the path his character seemed to be on throughout the series, and alluded to in many beta works. If you don't agree that the Hobus incident was canon, which technically CBS hasn't confirmed either, that's fine, as most of this theory doesn't rely on that event. But it is Kurtzman at the helm, and he wrote the 2009 films, therefore writing the Romulan destruction into primary canon. The negatives I see to this are that the Romulans may not be Picard's biggest fan, him having thwarted their schemes several times, so the Federation might want to send someone to whom the Romulans might seem more amenable. And he's also not a Vulcan, so he would likely face an uphill battle on both fronts. But hey, that could work in the series' favour, drama and all that. Then there's the other side of the coin. A future I think is equally likely, but one that I hope does not come to fruition. He could have become a recluse, shutting himself away from society and even Starfleet because he has nothing. With the death of his brother and his family, Picard is faced with the very real realization that he has no familial ties of his own, nothing left outside of Starfleet. I mean, there's Beverly, and I totally want them to get over the whole dead best friend thing. I'm simplifying, of course, but let's be honest, the time for a family has passed him by. Unless plot twists occur, surprise, Shinzon had a litter of mini-Lukes and now they all need a new genetically identical dad. No, please don't do that, CBS. Oh gods, don't do that. In seriousness though, all the ingredients for a grim, introverted lifestyle are there. The lifetime of tragedy, the dedication to a career that he'll eventually age out of, and he even has the location to fall back to, the Picard Vineyards, where he can while away his later years in isolation. He could be gloomy and angry about it, like a Luke Skywalker, but I feel that there would have to have been a greater catalyst for this that occurred within the 20-year gap, like the loss of Beverly or something. Although he could also be in very much good spirits, feeling that his time in the Federation is done, and bugger anyone who wants him to lift a finger to do more than pick grapes. This recluse future is one that I think is quite possible if the writers want to begin Picard in a dark place, but I think there's enough dark on our screens already, and I miss the promise of a brighter future. So what about a compromise? A congregation of all the ideas. One true passion that Jean-Luc Picard has always maintained is his love of archaeology. With his time as a captain done, perhaps some event leaves him with the decision to hand in his comm badge and phaser and pick up a trowel, getting all time team and going out into the universe to chase up unexplored ancient cultures and relics, perhaps unearthing ancient mysteries with present-day effects. I've heard this idea postulated before. It gives him that option of running away from people that his sense of loss could incur, but without being all mopey about it. Picard has the heart of an explorer. The vineyard was always his brother's thing, his father's thing, the very thing he ran away from when he joined Starfleet to begin with. Perhaps returning there makes for a sort of poetic closure, but I think it's more likely that he'd keep going for as long as he was able, and as age catches up with him, rather than forge outwards into space, he begins exploring the past. So, out of these options, what do I think is most likely? The archaeologist approach. Perhaps Picard did become the Federation ambassador after Spock, but met with too much resistance from a fractured Romulan people who descended into a civil war at the loss of their homeworld. Picard walks away from it all, having fulfilled his duty as best he could, now searching for a measure of personal closure. Doing something that he'd always wanted to do, but never did because of the uniform. And yes, perhaps there is an element of him running from the perceived failure of his obligations to his family, but that would be a more subconscious motivation, explaining why he's still out on alien worlds, digging in the dirt, rather than returning home to France, where he has the vineyard, his family's home, waiting for him. And I hope him and Beverly at least made a go of it. So that's my theories on what Picard will be up to. As to the main event of the show, no idea, that could literally be anything. I don't think that the Star Trek Online future will be carried out as depicted, as let's face it, while a great setting for a game, the future where many alliances broke down and the resurfacing of threats like the Borg sort of undoes much of the progress made in the show. But these are just some ideas based on what I've overheard from others out there and based on how I saw his character evolving in the series. Let's not end the discussion there though. What do you think the show will feature, and what do you want the show to feature, as these are two very different things. By now I'm used to re-evaluating my expectations, so I'm not sure as to where the show could take us, or what big events could have already sparked in the 20 or so year gap to shape him further. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll stick around for a while. I've been Rick, and until next time, goodbye.